If you're familiar with the intersection of Peachtree Street and Decatur Avenue, specifically near the Five Points MARTA station in downtown Atlanta, you probably noticed the skyscrapers, parks, and tourist attractions. But what you haven't noticed, or probably have never thought of, is the history of the city that is buried in ashes beneath your feet. The original Atlanta was ravaged by combat and fire in one of the most important conflicts in U.S. history. Howard Zinn, author of A People's History of the United States, published in 1980, describes the importance of the time. Racism in the North was as entrenched as slavery in the South, and it would take a war to shake both. Union Army General William T. Sherman, utilizing his total war strategy, defeated the Confederate Army and burned Atlanta, Georgia to the ground in 1864, breaking the morale and economy of the Confederate stronghold, changing the city and its residents forever. Whether you're born here or you came here for school, we all have ties to Atlanta, but oftentimes we forget the history of our city. I will take you on a journey that will reveal the Battle of Atlanta, the siege of the city by Union forces, as well as the burning and finally the aftermath that followed. The story that I'm going to tell you takes place during the closing years of the Civil War in America. First, I will discuss the Union's southward advance through Georgia and the Battle of Atlanta. As a series of evasive flanking maneuvers, the Union Army made its way to Kennesaw Mountain, just a few miles away from the Confederate Railroad hub in Atlanta. Following the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, the Union troops marched around the Confederate Army's flank, and the two clashed once again on July 20th, 1864, at Peachtree Creek in Buckhead, just a few miles from 5 Points. Federal troops were victorious, and the Army of Tennessee retreated into the walls of Atlanta to take up defensive positions. Sam Richards, an Atlanta citizen who was present during this battle, describes the events in his Civil War diary, A Chronicle of Atlanta Homefront, published in 2009. We have had considerable taste of the beauties of bombardment today. The enemy have thrown a great many shells into the city and scared the women and children, and some of the men pretty badly. Following the Confederate retreat into Atlanta, the citizens were at mercy of the Union Army. Now I will discuss the siege and burning of the city. Atlanta was too heavily fortified for a frontal assault. In response, Sherman laid siege on the Confederate Army for 1 month. Finally, Confederates were forced to retreat. They burned any excess supplies they couldn't carry. Union Army entered Atlanta, expelled all the citizens, and burned the city to the ground, destroying some of the South's most crucial supply and railroad arteries. According to Mark Worthman, author of Bonfire, published in 2009, General Hood, commander of the Tennessee Army, responded privately to Sherman's Atlanta campaign. The unprecedented measure you propose transcends in studied genius and ingenuous cruelty all acts ever before brought to my attention in the dark history of war. Now I will discuss the aftermath of the burning. We will focus on the physical as well as the emotional toll it took on Atlanta's citizens. Families were torn apart. They were left poor and starving by the Union Army's actions. Many Southerners would resent Sherman and the North for generations to come. Atlanta's former residents returned to their burned and pillaged city to rebuild and start anew. Paul Johnson, author of A History of the American People, published in 1997, describes what Georgians saw. The destruction in Georgia was worse. He cut a swath 60 miles wide through Georgia, destroying everything: railroads, bridges, crops, cattle, cotton gins, mills. The looting was appalling, and the atrocities stuck fear and dismay into the stoutest of Southern hearts. As the story of heartbreak and victory comes to an end, let us remember that this event will remain a staple in Atlanta's history for years to come. We have taken a look at the Battle of Atlanta, the siege and the burning of the city, as well as the intended and sometimes unintended results of the Union Army's actions. The closest many of you, including myself, have come to war is watching it on CNN before dinner. My fiance spent several years in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. He explained that when war is brought to your doorstep, the aftermath is especially horrific, especially for innocent bystanders. General William Sherman brought the aspect of total destruction and war to the citizens of Atlanta, crippling the South's economy and ultimately ending the war. So next time you're strolling through the streets of Atlanta, remember the history that lies beneath your feet. This modern capital, for better or worse, was forged from fire, a true phoenix rising from the ashes to the superpower it is today.